How you doing, everybody? It's Phil from NYRocks TV, and we're here at the Funkadelic Music Studios in Manhattan. I'm sitting next to no other than singer-songwriter, musician, Alan Merrill.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, man, it's really cool meeting you.
I've seen this show often, and
Legend.
It's a pleasure being here. All right.
Legend in music, to me,
Well, thank you.
And hopefully for the people that are watching, you are too.
I am a New Yorker. I'm from the Bronx.
Right. Bronx.
From
Ooh.
1378 College Avenue,
Uh-huh.
170th Street.
Cool.
But my mother sent me to a British boarding school when I was 9, so I'm an honorary Brit. My first hits in English were actually in England.
Wow.
Yeah.
But let's start with the music. How'd you
Okay.
start out with music?
Okay.
What was the first instrument that you played, or was it an instrument? Or
Yeah,
singing,
I had a
or
Carlos
you're a
acoustic
singer
guitar.
and songwriter.
When I was about 12, my father bought me a Carlos acoustic guitar. My father, Aaron Sachs, was a clarinet player and saxophone player.
You had music in the family.
And he played with Benny Goodman, Earl Father Hines. My parents both were in Earl Father Hines' band. My mother, Helen Merrill, was a singer with Earl Hines when she was a teenager.
That's like royalty. You're
and
American royalty.
Thank God they
rock
met
and
because
roll.
I'm here.
With a British twist.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, well, you know, they bullied me into speaking differently. I used to talk like one of the East Side kids when I was a boy.
Wow.
And I got to England, to the British boarding school, and they sort of thumped it out of me. Tomato!
Did they accept you after all?
Oh, yeah, after a while I became stronger than the rest of them because I got into
You're
sports.
in New York, you gotta be strong.
I was the
You gotta be
only
tough.
I was the only kid in the junior school who competed with the senior school as a
Right.
long distance runner.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were a sports guy. Too.
Yeah, I was
For the
until
rock and roll.
until I got the guitar.
You're like, what am I
Then the
doing?
sports guys and the rock guys were separate. The enemy camps for getting the girls, as they say.
When did you start out? Was it like in the
I
60s,
started
like,
playing
actually,
guitar in
right?
1963.
Wow, you look great.
And the Beatles
You look
came
great.
out. Yeah, thanks. I'm 63 now.
No way.
1951.
Come on, man.
Yeah, and so I saw.
You got the secret.
I actually was at one of the Murray the K shows in 1957,
Wow.
where Jerry Lee Lewis was performing.
Right.
And Buddy Holly and the Crickets, and it was amazing because I was this like 5-6-year-old kid. I was there with my babysitter. My mother got the tickets from Alan Freed,
Right.
and there I saw the beginning of rock and roll.
Wow.
Which is why I love rock
Amazing.
and roll.
Yeah.
I saw it from the time.
That's a story.
From the time I was a baby. Yeah.
That's a story in itself.
Do you know?
Just the
I
song.
remember my mother
Just
went
the
on
song
tour
is the
opening up for
story.
the. She was opening up for the Everly
Right,
Brothers
right.
in 1955.
Wow.
She came back with an Everly Brothers album,
Right.
and she put it on the turntable. I thought, ooh, this is good.
Yeah.
And then my parents are saying, rock and roll's taking over, jazz is dying.
Yeah.
And I'm listening. I'm going, now if I get into music,
Right.
I'm going to have to do this rock and roll
Right.
thing. And
And
I
that's, you
did.
got the guitar.
Once I got the guitar, they wouldn't get me an electric guitar, so I worked for my uncle's construction company, Jupiter Construction,
Right.
Harold Marcus. And
Yeah, how old are you then?
I was 13, 14. I was sweeping the office and answering the phones. And I finally bought a Rickenbacker, like John Lennon's Rickenbacker. And then as soon as I got the guitar, Marion McPartland, the jazz pianist, hooked me up with my first band. She said, there's these kids in Westchester, a little older than you, out in Dobbs Ferry. They were 17, and they were already driving. So they had this band, but they needed a lead singer and a lead guitarist. And I'd only been playing electric guitar 6 months, but I slotted right in.
Yeah.
And I started
We had
making
music
money.
in your family.
Yeah.
Your father was a musician for a while. Was it easy for you?
He was a lifelong
You think
musician.
maybe
Oh, yeah.
to become a guitarist, did you learn a little quicker?
Music was in the house all the time by osmosis.
Right.
I absorbed the music. So
Your mother too was into
my mother's
music,
singing.
too.
Yeah,
Singer.
she was with Atlantic Records.
Very interesting.
When they were Roost Records.
Right.
Before they were called Atlantic Records. And then she was with MRC Records. And she recorded the first album that Quincy Jones was involved in his career in 1954 with Clifford Brown playing the trumpet. So it's a legendary jazz album.
I remember because I went to, when I was in high school, my major was music history.
Okay.
I remember about Tommy Dorsey, Benny Goodman,
Yeah, my father was
G. Cooper.
Yeah, he was
and,
Benny Goodman's protege.
yeah,
My
all
dad
those
thought
guys.
that was too corny.
Wow.
So he went into bop.
Yeah.
And he was like the only white guy in these black bands, which was tremendous because I got to hear that swing every night. Which
it's funny how like years ago the blacks and whites blended together because the music was the thing that put the black and white together. The music bonded the people together. The music was they say the language of love and
It definitely was a bonding
peace.
experience. Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, I grew up touring in all black hotels with my parents. You know, I was the only white kid playing with all these black kids, and so I picked up some of that, whatever it was, attitude or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think everything
You're from the
helps
Bronx.
to make you what you are,
Yeah.
what you become. All the experiences help that.
Being from the Bronx, I was from Brooklyn. You
Yeah.
had to like get along with everybody.
Yeah.
Because everybody was together. Everybody.
Let me tell you this.
Right?
I was in a British boarding school in the mountains of Switzerland.
Wow.
14 years old. My mother and father run out of money to keep sending me there.
Right.
So I go back to the old neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I end up graduating Taft High School in the Bronx, which is like called the roughest school in the
And that
Bronx.
was public school?
Yeah.
Oh, so you went to public school and hung out. You weren't like all snuffy.
All my friends from when I
Right.
was a child were in
Right.
Taft because they still stayed in the neighborhood.
Right.
So I went from Switzerland back to the old neighborhood. Those are my old friends.
Cool.
They said, "You talk funny."
Because you pick up on, you pick
Yeah,
up on language when you're
yeah.
in these places. All right, you played in a couple of bands.
First band was the Alabasters out of Dobbs Ferry.
Okay.
We played the area. You know, I was 14, 15. Then when I got
Did
tired.
they play original music and stuff, or they would just like
Well,
copy? Cover,
we would do Louie Louie and all
Right.
those things that
Yeah,
we,
yeah.
the Kinks, You Really Got Me,
Yeah.
and all those covers.
Right.
Stones, Route
When you're
66.
young, yeah.
Yeah, I still play the
Cool.
same solo now on Route 66 I did at 15. So So anyway, I got bored with that band. They weren't keeping up with me musically. I was growing in leaps and bounds,
Yeah.
and I heard that there was this drummer Carl Peachman who was playing with John and the Housemen out of Hastings on Hudson.
Right.
The bass player was Steve Collins, who's the priest in Seventh Heaven now.
Wow.
He became a movie star.
Wow.
But he gave me Carl's number. He said, "I'm going away to college. John and the Housemen are splitting up." So we started this group called the Water Tower West,
Wow.
which was like, we had all those names back then in the
Yeah,
mid-'60s, like Jefferson Airplane. So there was this place, the Water Tower in Hastings on Hudson, where all the kids would go to smoke grass.
Yeah.
And so we used that name, Water Tower West. It was our little private secret. Anyway, we got a residency
In
at
the
the
city, they had the water towers back in
Yeah,
the day.
yeah.
You got, the wooden. It was like there was a company called Watch something,
Right.
Watchmen or something. And they had the water towers.
Yeah.
That's what they called. You
On
got
the
that
roofs.
from the water tower.
Yeah,
the roof.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Sorry to interrupt you.
Sure, a lot of pot
Sorry.
was smoked up on roofs across the 5 boroughs.
We had a lot of roof. We did a lot of roof things in
Yeah.
and New York City, being from New York City.
I actually used to, when I finished with Taft,
Yeah.
after school, I'd go up to Sheridan Avenue. Laura Nero was kind of like my cousin.
Oh.
We'd get high together on
Yeah,
the roof.
Yeah.
And whenever I hear singing up on the roof, it's funny to remember all that. Her uncle married my mother's sister, my aunt. So that's how we called each other cousin ever since we were little.
Wow.
Yeah.
We didn't get too high because you're still around. You look good, man.
I'm doing all right.
Something preserved you. Nothing.
Vodka.
But you survived the
And-
60s and 70s.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And the 80s. I
Wow.
was on tour all the 80s with Rick Derringer for the beginning
Love
of the
that
80s.
man.
And then the end of the
Guy
80s.
should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Rick Derringer.
Yeah. And then
we
I
had
played-
talk about the Zombies too.
Uh-huh.
With I had Edward on, Edward Rogers.
Ed Rogers,
He
yeah.
worked
Great
with
guy.
lead
Colin
singer.
Blunstone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So I worked with Meatloaf at the end of the 80s. I got married the second time. He was my best man.
Right.
He signed the
Meatloaf?
wedding certificate. My wedding certificate is signed Meatloaf
Yeah.
as the witness.
Meatloaf.
I said, you can't make this stuff up,
Is
So-
it legit?
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely
As long as it's
legit.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so I was doing the Cafe Wa thing
Mm.
with my band Water Tower West, which was a 4-piece. And we finished, the group broke up, and I went on to...
Did they make albums? You made
no, we never did it. We
Oh,
went up.
so
We went up to
it's-
Art and Bob Pohemas,
Yeah.
who were producing the Blues Magoos. They did a demo tape with us.
Right, Peppy.
Yeah,
Place.
yeah. It was.
I met Peppy.
and
I
they-
taught Ace Frehley how to play guitar. He
They
told
also
me.
recorded
Hope
the
that's
group
true.
Kangaroo.
Yeah.
And these were the kid bands who were playing at the Cafe Wa at the time. I showed Bruce Springsteen where to set up in 1966 when he came down for the first time. He was pulling all this gear out of the van.
Was he with the East Street Band?
No, it was Castiles.
Oh.
That was his band.
Wow.
And His dad drove him
Ask
in.
the experts, you know,
Dad,
you were there.
Dad drove him in. They
Yeah.
were taking all their amps and drum kit out. I said,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
He said, we're going to set up. I said, no one moves the back line. If you do that, then you're never going to hire you again. You use the kit that's up there. You use the amps
He
that are up
listened?
there. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they got the gig.
Yeah.
But and then I sat there with Bruce, and we watched the next band, which was Kangaroo. And Kangaroo had John Hall from Orleans,
Wow.
before he was famous, and Teddy Spilios, who was probably as good as Jimi Hendrix as a guitar player. He had this old broadcaster with strings that were this far off.
Stratocaster.
Yeah, it was a broadcaster. It was before.
He wasn't left-handed like.
No, he was a righty, but it was a
Yeah.
broadcaster, and it was before it was a Telecaster and a Stratocaster. They had
Yeah.
broadcasters,
Okay.
and there was only a few made. But
Yeah.
this thing was impossible. Bruce couldn't believe how far off how does he play that?
Yeah.
But it got this sound like it was backwards.
Right.
Anyway, these were the bands that were playing. There were the Raves playing, Castile's Bruce Springsteen, John Hall's Kangaroo, my band. So many of us went on to write #1 records. It was great. It was a great breeding ground. John had his Dance with Me, with Orleans. Okay, so my band breaks up at the Cafe Wa. My bass player, who was a very strong musician, singer. We had this really good two-part harmony, like the Everly Brothers. It was close dovetailing harmony. And when he quit, we just couldn't replace him. We tried 4 or 5 people, and I was like, no, we got to break up the band, guys. At the same time, the Left Bank put in, I can't remember if it was the Village Voice or the East Village Other, an ad for a guitarist. Famous New York band, the Left Bank, are auditioning guitarists. So I went to Harlequin Studios on Broadway. I think it was in the 40s or 50s, somewhere. Anyways, where Broadway used to audition singers and people for plays. But I went there, and there was a whole row of guitarists, like 50 people.
Right.
We all went in one after another. So I went in there, I sang Walk Away, Renee, and I sang Pretty Ballerina. And George Cameron and Tom Finn were there, and they said, you're on the short list.
Yeah.
And the other guy who was on the short list was Bob Kulick,
Okay.
who, was in the original version of Kiss. Ironically, fast forward
Right.
from
He worked with Meatloaf.
1968
Right.
to 1986,
Right.
I'm in the band Meatloaf with Bob Kulick.
And he's an amazing guitarist.
He's an amazing
Actually,
guitar player.
He was with with Kiss in the beginning.
That's right.
And that's when he really walked in with the audition story. You can probably read about that in the book. There's so many Kiss books out there.
Bob is a very nice guy,
Bob.
but he didn't get the Left Bank gig. I did because I could sing, and they're a vocal group. So they kept me hanging around for about a month. All the while, my mother's living in Japan with her new husband. She's remarried. And I'm about 17 at the time.
Right.
And I'm living alone on West 72nd Street, and they're paying the rent from Japan.
Right.
And I have a charge account across the street.
They did good for themselves because they were musicians, but they were successful musicians.
Yeah. Well,
They
this is her
did
second husband, a UPI vice president.
Yeah.
My parents,
Oh, okay.
my parents actually divorced when I was 4, but he was the UPI vice president. He was the head of Pan Asia.
Okay.
And Vietnam was happening at the time. Cambodia. He was a very integral part of getting the news back to America.
Very smart.
So he's very powerful guy. But I was a very wild kid, and I looked a little strange back then. So he was very conservative. So it was better for me to stay in New York and not blow up the spot for him with his business by coming to Japan. But the Left Bank thing didn't work out for me. I auditioned, they wanted me in, I learned all the songs, I learned the new single, Dark as the Bark, and My Friend Today.
Wow.
I had the promo single, Tom Finn told me, take it home, learn it. I did. And then, after that, they told me they weren't going to go on as a vocal 3-piece and have backing band.
Yeah.
And they didn't want a new guitarist. I was like, damn. You have me waiting around all this time?
Right.
All the while my mother's going, come to Japan, cut your hair short, come to Japan.
Yeah.
So I did. I went to Japan.
Wow.
I was very
It's
conservative.
like almost gave up on your dream.
That's not where it ended.
Right.
I was 17 years old. I felt like I'd landed on Mars.
Right.
I was this kid who didn't speak a word of Japanese. There were very few foreigners in Tokyo at the time. And my parents, my stepfather and my mother took me to a disco called Biblos. And then we went to Mugen, the disco next door. And there was a girl dancing who looked a little bit like Patty Boyd. She was Japanese, but she had dyed blonde hair, and she looked like
They wanted to look like us.
So she came up to
Japanese.
me and she was like, "I like you. Come here tomorrow without your parents." So I was like, "Okay." So I did, and we became lovers, and we're still in touch today.
Oh, wow.
She actually did the picture of one of the pictures on my newest single.
Mm.
She's a photographer and a set designer in London. She did the Robin Hood design. Her name is Michi Nakao.
Okay.
She became my girlfriend for a couple of years. But a few months after that, she was
Right.
dancing in a club called the Pasha Club in Akasaka.
She caught your eye.
Oh, we were already
Caught your eye.
we were already like deeply in love
Wow.
by the winter.
What years were that?
This was '68.
Wow. All right.
So I'm
This
with
is
her.
like Austin Powers.
Yeah. So I'm she's dancing and
the go-go.
so
The
she
go-go.
calls me up and she says there's this band called The Lead, and their guitarist has just been deported. He doesn't have a visa. They need a guitarist now. They haven't finished their album.
Right.
And they're on RCA Records. Come on down to the club now and bring your Telecaster.
Right.
So I did.
Good thing you didn't get rid of that.
I took his
You
place
got rid of
back.
your hair. You cut your hair.
No,
You
but
didn't get rid of your guitar. Thank God.
I started growing it back by then.
Yeah,
I had like a
right.
Paul McCartney Sgt. Pepper hair around that time.
All
It was a
right.
little over the ears, the fringe was there. It was over the back of my collar. It was
Can't
still
take the
beaded.
rock and roll out
No.
of the rock and roll.
So I was actually going to classes at Sophia University in Tokyo, and taking English language poetry classes for my songwriting
Right.
to strengthen my words, and she got me my first gig in Japan, and I joined the band The Lead that night. I was recording the album Sound of Silence on RCA Records, and I'm touring, and suddenly all these Japanese girls are screaming at me.
Go figure. You were in New York. You figured that could happen better over here. New York being right in New York
Right,
City.
yeah.
And then you go to Japan.
Yeah.
And then it like catapults you.
Yeah.
And inspires you when you thought. Like one door closed, you thought, "Oh man, all right."
Yeah,
Let me see what's gonna happen.
we had a hit single in Japan called
Awe
Awebara, Blue Rose.
It's amazing.
And so,
Yeah.
unfortunately, the bass player of The Lead also had a visa problem. It was worse than a visa problem, but I'm gonna candy coat it.
All right.
And he was deported. He even changed his name because he's so embarrassed. Right now, he's changed his name to another name. But his name is Phil, and he was gone.
Geez,
And then I knew you'd relate. So the three of us tried to go on as a three-piece, and RCA Victor weren't having it. They didn't want any more visa problems. Visa problems.
Visa.
They go up in
Credit
smoke.
card. The credit card
The visa went up in smoke, literally.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to do then. I went around in a club called Biblos that I mentioned before, which was a show business hangout.
In Japan?
Yeah, for example, Grand Funk Railroad would come over, they'd hang out at Biblos. Everyone would hang out at Biblos. And so I went around at every table and I said, "Excuse me, does anyone need a singer-songwriter?" I was at the group The Lead, and then I ran into this guy, Yuya Uchida, who you may know him from Black Rain. He played the bad guy in Black Rain. He was like one of the Yakuza. And he's like,
he a karate guy?
legend. Well, he's
Action guy?
more of a scene maker, and he looks like a Yakuza, but he's not. He's a real sweetheart. But anyway, he said to me, "I know who you are. I've seen you play with the band." He said, "Come to TBS tomorrow, and you do Back in the USSR in the key of G, right?" I said, "Yeah." So I did Back in the USSR next morning. And he had the biggest agent in Japan watching the TV show. And the next day he took me up. It's what they call bringing you up in Japan.
Yeah.
It's like, he got a fee,
Right.
for finder's fee for getting me to this company.
Right.
So the next day I'm signing a contract with Watanabe Productions, the biggest production company in Japan.
Right.
The day after that, they signed me to Atlantic Records, Japan, which is new in Japan. So I was the first male signing to Atlantic Records, Japan, in history.
It's like a Jimi Hendrix story.
Yeah,
Hendrix, he was like here, from Seattle, he
Right.
came to New York,
Yeah.
couldn't really do anything
Went to
here
England.
that much,
Yeah.
went to England,
Yeah.
and it's like, comes back.
Sometimes
That's like-
it's
that's weird.
energizing to leave where you're
Right.
from, I think,
Is that what I need? Oh my God,
So, so I went to,
I don't want to leave though.
no, I love New York.
love it.
It's great. But I could live in
Rocks.
Paris again. I lived in Paris for a few years. A lot
Not
of
if
good
you're
friends.
married.
My wife loves Paris too, so everything's good.
You gotta be good.
And all my kids are grown up.
Okay.
My youngest daughter's becoming a lawyer. She's 25. She's at Duke University. I'm very proud
When'd you
of
get
her.
married? When you
My second marriage was 1987. My
Yeah.
first marriage was 19...
That was the Japanese girl?
No, no, no. I
You
never
didn't
married a
marry?
Japanese girl.
Yeah.
We broke up. That's a heartbreaking story.
Well,
for
you're
me- for
young,
me.
you were experimenting.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But she cheated on me. I didn't cheat on her. But I didn't take it
We all
as
have.
flower power,
Flower
lovey-dovey
power.
as she thought I would.
Yeah.
I was
And then
very
you got married
possessive.
again.
I got married at first to a model named Kathy Damon. She was
In
highly
New York
enforced.
and
top earner.
Manhattan when you came back.
Well, actually, we got married in England. That was 1977. We got married.
How'd you get back to to England and stuff like that in between
Well,
Japan?
I got.
after that,
I'm leading up to that.
Go back to the
All right,
story
I'm
now.
winding
We're
up,
gonna go
winding up to that.
backwards a little
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm in Japan.
Right.
I'm first signing to Atlantic Records Japan. I do a whole album in Japanese.
Right.
I hardly speak Japanese, so I'm reading it
Yeah.
phonetically, and my manager is teaching me perfect pronunciation because he's like a dictator. He's now one of the biggest
Wow.
people in show business in Japan. His name is Yokichi Osato, and he owns
Wow.
Amuse. They even have an office in New York. They're that
Remember.
big.
You remember.
Amuse Corporation. But he was a young kid back then. He was 25, and I was, like 19 or something like that. And I was
Yeah.
still a teenager.
Wow.
But they got me immediately like doing commercials.
Yeah.
When I signed with Watanabe Pro, I was Nissan cars.
Wow.
I did the 1,200, 1,400, 1,600 ads
You
on
started out
television.
young in
Yeah.
business.
So I had hit.
You started getting a lot of experience. All of a sudden, after you hit Japan,
Yeah.
you started getting all these things were starting to happen.
Well, I was playing the huge shows in Japan with all the Japanese, like the Japanese Beatles was
Yeah.
the Tigers, the Japanese Rolling Stones were the Tempters, the
Wow.
Beach Boys were the Spiders,
Right.
and I was on shows with all of them. So this guaranteed I was going to be in front of 5,000, 10,000 people every time I performed,
Yeah.
and they accepted me into the group sound scene. So I was the only Westerner to make it that far in. My earlier group, The Lead, didn't get that big. Had a small hit, and we played the small coffee houses. But after that, I was playing the stadiums.
Wow.
And ironically, one of the guys backing me up was Tetsu on my solo stuff.
Right.
Tetsu Yamauchi,
What did he play?
bass,
Bass player.
and he became the bass player of Free.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
He
Paul
replaced
Rogers.
Andy Fraser,
Wow.
and then he replaced Ronnie Lane
Yeah.
in the Faces. So he's the only Japanese
Really
guy
good.
to really become
Must have been
huge.
really good.
And I was,
Really good
yeah,
bass
I was
player.
like, go for it, man. He
Yeah.
didn't want to go to Free. He was afraid.
Wow.
And I said,
Yeah.
this is your chance.
Ah,
You're
yeah.
gonna be like the Samurai Plus.
You'll regret
know?
it if he didn't.
Yeah. So he
Right?
did. He went over there. I have letters from him going like, well, I just
Good
got
thing I listened
here,
to
and I kept them. It's on my Tumblr page. Letters from Tetsu, And the return address is Paul Kossoff, Goldborn Muse. And I knew Kossoff really well because
Yeah.
we all hung out in Tokyo together after
Wow.
Free did their shows.
I've never been to Japan. I'd
Yeah.
love to go one day.
I was with
would
Paul
love to go.
Rogers and his first wife Machi on their first date.
Wow.
Me and my public relations girl from Atlantic Records.
I met him
Yuki.
once. I met him at BB King's.
Was he nice to you?
Yeah, he's a really
All right.
cool guy. Yeah, I met
Was
him
he-
backstage, and I wasn't really doing the show back then.
He
It
can
was
be
like
not
before
very nice.
2000.
He can be not very
I
nice.
don't know, but I was like,
For example,
oh, man.
that
I
night.
was like, you don't want that because, especially you're meeting your idols,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden they're mean to you, and
Yeah.
whatever nasty, and then it's like. It just blows your whole thing.
But you're
And it's
physically,
like- maybe I
you
thought
have
I was gonna beat them up.
you have a very formidable,
Joe Pesci
formidable
sound.
shape. Yeah.
And, you know,
Whereas at the time I met
used to
Paul
be a
Rogers,
weightlifter.
I was 118 pounds. I was a skinny little kid, and somebody set his hair on fire by accident,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to go like this to his
Yeah.
head because I was afraid he'd turn around and whack me. So I said to his girlfriend, I said, Machi,
Mm-hmm.
Paul's hair's on fire, put it out. So she got some water and put it out. I said, "Phew,"
Wow.
because he was known for turning around and just wheeling off and punching,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some guys.
he was
Short fuse.
very short fuse on that guy. I don't know, he may have mellowed with age.
He's British, right?
Yeah, he's British. He's from
Canada now.
he's moved
I know
to
he lives in
Vancouver.
Canada. Yeah, his wife is from Canada. Very Canadian.
Second wife.
Second wife?
I knew his first wife, Machi.
Wow.
I was on like I said, we double dated on our.
All right, so
on his
don't
first
mess
date.
with Paul Rogers, man.
I don't know about now, but back then he was a shit
They
kicker.
would've given you a fresh one.
Okay, so we're gonna fast forward now to my solo thing ended because Paul Kossoff wanted to play guitar on my album, which would be my second album for Atlantic, with Tetsu on bass.
And now what band? What band was that band? The name of that band?
This was solo at the time.
Oh, okay.
So Kossoff said, we were jamming in Roppongi in Tokyo, and Kossoff said to me, "I'll play on your next album for free, for nothing."
So you put how many solo albums out now? By then, now it's like
at that point it was well, there was one band album and 2 solo albums.
Right.
So I wanted Kossoff on the album. Atlantic said no. They said he was too heavy for me, that I was a teen idol. And that's when I said, this contract's in Japanese. I can't read it. It's invalid.
Yeah.
So I took the contract and tore it up. And probably if I was Japanese, I'd be in the Tokyo Bay with cement shoes. But because I was a foreigner, I got away with it. So I ended up coming back to, I went out of Japan for a little bit. I did a demo with John Siomas and Jake Hooker, who became the guitarist of the Arrows later on. We called that Streak.
Right.
And that was a band Streak, which had many permutations afterwards. But we started it in New York on a holiday from Japan. Then I said, I'm going back to Japan. Went back to Japan.
You had that girl back there.
No, we had already broken up. I had a lot of other girls. I think I was going out with Diana Hodges, who was a model back then. She was a Panasonic.
That'll bring you back.
She was a Panasonic model. She's half Japanese, half American, Army girl, Army baby. I didn't know she was older than me. I found out later on she was like 5 or 6 years older, but she didn't look it. She didn't look it. She looked like she had a baby face. So anyway, Vodka Collins was the next band that I started that was important. I had a group called Godzilla before that, which didn't really happen, but I was trying to rival T-Rex. I thought a group out of Japan playing glam rock would be amazing to rival T-Rex in England.
Did they take kindly to the name
Godzilla? The Japanese loved it. They loved it. In fact, we did weird gigs, like I remember opening up for the movie Melody Fair, which was Mark Lester. It was a kids movie, but we get up on stage and play, and I'd have fangs on, and I'd get out there, and there'd be towns we'd play at where they'd never seen a foreigner before, and they screamed like in terror. Then I took them out, and I said, it's only a joke, and then the girls would scream because they liked me, and then they screamed throughout the movie because they liked Jack Lester and Jack Wilde and Mark Lester. You remember Jack Wilde? He was the kid in.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. He was the Artful Dodger.
Right.
That was his first claim to fame. Anyway, so I started this group, Vodka Collins, after Godzilla broke up. And we were hooked up with the drummer from the Tempters, who I said was the Rolling Stones of Japan. And I took the bass player from High Society, who was a really great guitar player too, and Monsieur Kamayetz from the Spiders, who were the Beach Boys of Japan. So we already were like a little super group. We'd all done some stuff. And I thought, I'm going to make the first glam rock record in Japanese. So I write all these songs in English, give them to my drummer Hiroshi to translate into Japanese. And here I am, an American kid. I made the first glam rock records in Japanese, in history. And they were out, the single was out in 72, the album in 73.
And you sang it?
In Japanese, yeah.
Wow. I don't think, did you still have those recordings?
Oh yeah, yeah. The album.
You didn't do no videos.
The LP goes for about 600.
Not too bad.
Yeah, there were videos, but unfortunately, no one can find them. There was one that was airing on TBS with Sands of Time, my single, back in the day, and nobody could find it. I mean, they have very little storage space in Japan, and most of our TV appearances went out live. For example, Vodka Collins were the opening act for the Jackson 5 on their first ever appearance in Japan.
They didn't have space or time. Space or time in Japan.
So the concert I did with the Jackson 5 went out live, and was never taped. But I hear Joe Jackson has a copy of the show. I've been emailing
the Jackson 5 and Joe Jackson.
Well, Joe Jackson, no, Joe Jackson's the dad.
Oh, yeah, Joe Jackson.
He's the manager.
Joe Jackson.
No, he wasn't.
How did he get in there?
He was in elementary school.
Well, Joe Jackson, we only had every part of Jackson 5, because the father.
Right.
But I was like, oh, how did he get in there too?
No,
Joe Jackson, because the musician Joe Jackson.
He would have been too young. He was a baby then.
Wow.
But yeah.
So you actually performed with them?
Yeah, we opened up for the Jackson 5, and Michael stood and watched the whole sound check. And he was bopping up and down, and there I was in full glam lipstick and eyeliner and blush, And, you know, the whole glam
Were the
clothing.
dolls out by then? in New
No,
York?
no. It was,
So you could have been like the first guy with the glam rock.
well,
thing.
you know, but I was in Japan, so I had to do it wherever I was. If I was in Pakistan, I
Maybe
would have
somebody
done it in
picked up
Pakistan.
on and they learned from you.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
There were a lot of glam rock acts after me
Right.
in Japan. But I was the first with Vodka Collins. And
Cool.
that album's still being sold today. It's reissued
Wow.
like once a year.
Yeah.
EMI in Japan. And, you know, it's an interesting navigation, the whole
life.
career.
You had
it's
some
it's
life.
quite amazing.
It's not over now.
No, it's far
It's
from
still-
over. Far from over.
It's an amazing story.
So,
Wow.
but the downside of Vodka Collins was before
Yeah.
Vodka Collins became famous, I was playing bass on a lot of hit records in Japan for bands whose bass player wasn't so good. I would lend my American
How did they get
thing
the
to it.
name? Was it Vodka Collins?
Vodka Collins
Like
was
vodka or the drink
vodka,
vodka?
drink vodka.
And Collins.
The
is
reason
drink.
was I wanted to call it Godzilla and just
Right.
do that again, but my drummer said, "No, Keith Richards' favorite drink this summer
Right.
is a Vodka Collins.
Oh, all right.
We should call it Vodka Collins." I was like, "Okay, I don't care.
I know
You
there
can
was
call
a
it
story
anything."
behind that one. Right?
So that's the story of it. Is
Right.
we, you know,
Wow.
we decided, okay, that's, you know, it's sweet and sour drink, and, you know,
Yeah.
I lent the. I had the teen.
James
I had the
Bond, the
teen.
martini,
I had the
shaken,
teen
not
appeal,
stirred.
like I was the Mark Bolan of the situation, and he was more like Keith Richards. He had this like "don't fuck with me" attitude,
Yeah.
you know,
Wow.
and you know, he was inside for about 3 long stretches. Actually, he was a real bad boy, and you know, we didn't work together from 1990 to 1995 on our reunions because he was away. At the pleasure of the Japanese government.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you know he's gone now, R.I.P. Hiroshi Oguchi. But he wrote the lyrics to the Japanese glam rock songs that I sang, the first ones in history. So I was doing a lot of sessions before Vodka Collins became famous. We became famous. We had 2 A-sides, hit one after another, back to back. So they said, "You're going to play the Budokan," and I can't pay my rent because I've given up my session niche because the band's too busy for me to play the sessions. So I go to my manager and I say, "Look, I need 30,000 yen more a month," and he said,
Is that like
No.
$30,000?
It was $300.
$300?
Yeah. My rent was $700, 70,000 yen, and I was making 70,000 yen in my salary, so I wasn't gonna be able to eat. Because my drummer's family was in the meat business. He was bringing me back some meat, and my girlfriend was bringing me ramen. I was going out with Yoshiko Mandai at that time, and she was the beginning of she was at the beginning of the Arrows too. So I always had a girlfriend who was in on the scene.
Yeah.
So she was gorgeous. Anyway, you know, Japanese girl, hair down to here, and a body like Raquel
Yeah.
Welch. So you know, you can't go
Beautiful
wrong.
Japanese
Yeah.
woman. Beautiful.
Yeah. Very rare to have all those curves in Japan at that time, but she did. I digress. Okay, so I'm back to why Vodka Collins broke up. Vodka Collins broke up because I couldn't pay my rent. I asked my management for money. They said, "Ask your mother because she's rich." I asked my mother. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm playing the Budokan this weekend." She said, "You're an idiot. Leave Japan." So at the same time, Jake Hooker's calling me from London. Streak has now sputtered to an end.
Well, why
the
do you
band
think
we
she
started.
wanted you to leave? And why do you think she said, like,
Because my mother
don't
believed,
play there.
my mother always said, "God bless the child who's got his own." And if you're playing the Budokan, it's a 10,000 seater.
Yeah.
You should be making your rent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. With all those people.
Right.
The tickets,
So my manager laughed at me. I said, "I'm leaving for London." He said, "No, you're not. You've built a career here for 7 years.
Right.
You don't have the balls to go to England." And I said, "No, watch me." So before the Budokan show,
Right.
I got on a plane and went to England with no money
Yeah.
because they weren't paying me.
Yeah. You had to
So-
bluff. You called
Yeah.
their bluff.
So I had my
Right?
Hofner bass and my
Yeah.
TD 340 Gibson
Wow.
guitar. I didn't know which I was going to play when I got to England. I knew if I had both, I'd be able to play one or the other.
Yeah.
And Jake hooked us up with Peter Meaden as a manager at first. And Peter said, "Oh, you know the Who's logo?" Peter was the original manager of the Who.
Okay.
You know, before Kerbishley and the other guy got in, Terrence Stamp's brother, Chris.
Wow.
So Meaden saw this arrow coming up from the Who's logo, which was his idea.
Yeah, they had the album.
So he
The Who
said-
with the Who's Next.
Yeah,
right?
you got to
With
be
the-
the arrows.
Yeah.
He said, "This would be
Yeah.
like my one in the eye when you guys make it."
Yeah.
So we said, okay, Arrow's fine. Well, you know, Peter Meaden named the band. So he came into the rehearsal studio with us, and he like started to get the band in shape, to find the characters, like he did with the Who.
Yeah.
You know, this guy does this guy does that.
Did you always kind of like always think like, hey, you know what? Another door's gonna open, because it already happened to you now that you went to Japan.
Yeah.
And even if you went to England, you had it going on.
Yeah.
Time was on your side.
Well, you know,
right?
what I had in my favor was
Right.
I knew how to play, I knew how to sing,
Right.
and I knew how
You
to
had
work
talents.
a camera. I knew how to work a
Yeah.
camera and sell a song. When I'm performing a song on camera,
Right.
I know exactly what to do, especially when I was young and pretty. I
Yeah.
knew how to flutter my eyelashes and sell the girls on the song. So I had no money, like I said. We didn't have enough money to make a tape.
Right.
So me and Jake Hooker went around all the offices. He's strumming, I'm singing, because, you know, our own songs.
Yeah.
And I can't sing Jake's songs because they're not melodic, and he can't sing my song.
Right.
So we kind of kept that separate. Anyway, we wandered into Rack Records, and we talked to Dave Most, Mickey Most's brother.
Right.
And Dave said, I want to sign you up for a publishing deal. I think you're great. And it's not a record deal. And then Mickey Most walks in and said, hey, Mick, what do you think of this? And we play a couple of songs from Mickey Most, who I know of because my manager, Bob Levine, when I was a kid in New York, was doing the merchandising for Mickey Most and Herman's Hermits and Donovan and the Animals. And we even bought the Animals rehearsal PA for my group, the Water Tower West, going way back to the 60s. So here I am with Mickey Most, and I'm terrified because this is the big guy, and I better impress him. So he said, your songs are all right, but I have a song for you. So he brings in this song, Touch Too Much. That's a song by Mike Chapman and Nicky Chin. And I go, okay, it's all right. You know, he said, if you can learn this, come back tomorrow. This is actually written for the Suite. They passed on it, written for Susie Quattro, passed on it. Mickey Most offered to produce David Cassidy with it. David Cassidy turned it down. Now Mickey's nose was out of joint. He really wanted to have a hit with this song. And he saw me, and he was like, there's a little bit of the David Cassidy-ish image with you. You know, and I was like, oh, I'm not back to the teeny bopper scene again. I just got out of that. But I needed rent money. I had no money in England. My shoes literally had holes in them from walking around.
Now you called their bluff, and now, oh my God, now I need the money. Man,
I went home.
Yeah.
Well, not home. I was sleeping on Jake Hooker's floor in Mulberry Close in London. Went back to the apartment, and I learned this song, this Do or Die. I got to learn this good. So I sang it for Mickey. He said, good, we'll go into the studio. So the next thing, we had to get Paul Varley from Streak. We had to locate him. So Paul came into the fold. And then we started rehearsing in the Rack basement. So we do the song like, we play the song like 50 times a day. And Mickey said, okay, it's ready to record. So we got the B-side. We can make it together.
Arrows,
Arrows, yeah.
The band already formed. So who's in the band? You're in the band?
I'm the lead singer. And Jake Hooker and Paul Varley was it. Cool. And the two guys from Streak. So this is the group that John Siomas and Jake and I started a couple of years earlier. They went over to England and nothing happened. You know, they made some decent sides, but.
And you came into the band.
I came into the band because Jake wanted to get me over from Japan desperately because he knew with that component it was probably going to take off, and he was right. Cool. Because within 6 months of me being in England, we were in the top 10. And that's 40 years ago this week.
And that was just with the single, one
single,
right?
We got up to number 6. So suddenly I had money for the rent. Got my girlfriend over from Japan. We had a beautiful apartment. I'm a pop star. Within 6 months, I'm in all the magazines and everything. And then we put out...
it in like OD or something like that. Because the best is yet to come. See?
Yeah.
Remember that, kids. You see? You can party, but don't go crazy.
So by the winter, we were touring with Susie Quattro. You know, as a double act. Arrows and Susie Quattro all over Europe and England. And she became like my sister. She became like my
She was in the, what?
She was Susie Quattro, but before that she was the Pleasure Seekers. Susie Quattro was the prototype for Joan Jett. Joan Jett took her whole image from Susie.
That's a different.
So Susie and I joked that Joan Jett is Rackenstein. It's Rack Records because Joan took Susie's image and our song, put it together, and boom,
Wow.
blew up the spot. She was
Yeah.
great. Yeah, Joan was, she did a great job.
Mm.
So fast forward again to
Right.
the Arrows' second single. Didn't happen because we didn't get a Top of the Pops. Usually a band gets Top of the Pops, which was the most influential TV show in England,
Okay.
with their follow-up single to a hit records, but we didn't get that.
Yeah.
They didn't, I don't think Mickey really anticipated that we would take off so fast,
Mm.
and he didn't really want to be burdened with another teeny bop act,
Mm.
and we were getting the Screaming Girls going and stuff, and
Yeah.
he saw all that with Herman's Hermits. He
Now it
didn't
was
wanna do
already
that
the
again.
'70s, right?
It's the 70s.
The
It's
70s.
talking 74.
Yeah. 'cause
Mickey was
that
winding
days were
down.
over
He was winding down. He
days
handed
were
most of his productions to Mike
with
Chapman.
the Beatles and stuff.
Mike Chapman was doing most
was
of
the
it.
teeny bop
Yeah.
things.
Mike was producing The Sweet and Susie Quattro and Mud and Kenny and all those bands that were big
Right.
at Rack Records.
Now what happened with that? Now you
So-
had a
so
single, right?
We went on the Rack Britain tour in 1975 with Susie Quattro and Cozy Powell's Hammer.
All right.
I had played on Cozy Powell's, bass on Cozy Powell's record,
Right.
The Man in Black,
Wow.
which also was in the charts 40 years ago, this week, at number
Remember
21.
everything like a book.
So
Oh
I
my
had,
God.
I had the number 6 record and the number 21 record that I was on
Right.
in the British Top 30
Wow.
in 1974 this week, as we're speaking.
Yeah.
It was good days.
Wow.
So we were on tour together, Cozy Powell's Hammer, Susie Quattro Arrows, 1975. And our third single goes into the charts while we're on tour.
Mm-hmm.
So we're real popular.
Right.
We were on Top of the Pops and touring at the same time, and it was just nuts. So we're
And
thinking,
now what songs were they? And I had
this was My Last Night With You, was the third one, and that got up to
And they
number
made the
22.
charts.
Number 22 in the English charts.
but that wasn't the biggest one.
No, the
Yeah.
fourth single,
All right.
which Mickey Most didn't
All
like,
right.
was initially a B-side to a
Mhm.
song called Broken Down Heart, and it's a
Right.
song I wrote called I Love Rock and Roll, which has since become an international classic.
Come on.
But Mickey
now.
Most
Oh,
didn't
my
hear it
God.
as a hit single at the time. And there's a clip of us recording
Yeah.
the original B-side of
Right.
it, where I have a BBC camera up my nose, and they're talking about how the groups like us never make any money
Wow.
because we only get the B-sides. And ironically, we're singing I Love Rock and Roll, which is
Wow.
probably one of the biggest songs in British rock history in the publishing game.
It's amazing.
So it's, life is funny,
now,
you-
when you wrote that song, how did you come up with that? And did you write that by yourself? How did you think of that lyric?
I've been hanging out with Barry Crost,
Yeah.
who was, and Mick Jagger,
Yeah.
and Prince Rupert Lowenstein, who's just passed away, R.I.P.
Because it's such a simple thing.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, but Mickey said to me, I want you to write a song
Right.
that only has 3 chords,
Right.
that has a strong riff, it has to have a melodic verse, and a rousing sing-along chorus.
Wow.
And he said it's got to be sort of like a hybrid of Summertime Blues,
Right.
Wild Thing, and I'm thinking, how the hell do you do that?
Yeah.
So, I'll get the chorus first. So the chorus was a response to hanging out with people like Prince Rupert Lowenstein, who I knew the Rolling Stones had as their accountant.
Yeah.
So Mick Jagger,
Mm-hmm.
Mick Jagger wrote this song, It's Only Rock and Roll, with Keith.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's bloody cheeky, It's
Mhm.
only rock and roll.
Right.
I thought, I love rock and roll. That's
Right,
a good
right.
response. So, 3 chords,
Yeah.
melodic, I love rock and roll.
Right.
So put another dime in the jukebox, baby.
Yeah.
That's melodic enough for Mickey. To record it, to get a B-side recorded with Mickey, you had to write an epic song.
Mhm.
Because he said, we have quality control. We have quality control at Rack.
So
And-
the lyrics, I love rock and roll, you actually wrote those.
Yeah, yeah. That was a no-brainer, really. But it was, didn't know whether we were going to use coin or dime.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to make it international, and I said, Mickey, what do you think, coin or dime? And he said, definitely dime, because you're an American singing, so keep the dime. So I did. And then that was the chorus, was the first day of writing. So he approved of that. So then, that night, I fashioned the verses,
Mhm.
with my girlfriend sleeping. She remembers this. I had a candle and a little Sony condenser mic
Right.
thing, and I was playing the guitar without it being plugged in. And I'm whispering, I saw her dancing there by the record machine. And I was writing it about, because I thought the arrows were
I
gonna,
Love Rock and Roll came first, and then you got the verse.
the chorus was first, and then the
All
verse.
right, cool.
So I thought it would be clever to write the verses about a hit song that's already a hit song coming out of the jukebox.
Right.
So that when we have a hit with it, it'll be
Right.
Rod Serling time.
Right.
So it'll be like a hit song that was a fictitious hit song that's a huge hit song.
Were you thinking about the girl? Who was the girl? Was it?
Well, it was really
any
two
girl.
fictitious kids who
Yeah.
were about 17. And I remember being at top-ranked ballrooms doing autograph signings and watching them pick each other up, hearing their favorite songs.
Yeah.
And top-ranked ballrooms were unique to England, I think. The kids used to gather in them on Friday, Saturday night. So, yeah,
And then the rest of the lyrics came with.
the
after
rest of the lyrics were about the two kids picking
Yeah.
each other up, and the guy scores. He gets the girl to go home with him.
Yeah.
And they were singing I Love Rock and Roll, their favorite song that was
Yeah.
coming out of the jukebox that wasn't really a hit song.
Yeah.
So it was magic for me that it became a huge international
Now
hit.
you played that with the Arrows.
Yeah.
And you
Well,
were hits. It was a hit song with the Arrows.
It was a B-side initially for
Right.
the Arrows. Then Mickey Most's wife loved the song and said,
Right.
"What are you doing, Mickey?" Because Mickey, I gotta say, the same week,
Right.
Mickey had put "You Sexy Thing, I Believe in Miracles"
Yeah.
on the B-side of Another Blue Night,
Right.
which was a really dirgy song by Hot Chocolate.
Yeah.
And I believe
Yeah.
in miracles.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like a cool up-tempo R&B song. But Mickey didn't hear it. He put it on the B-side first. So Mickey's wife
Right.
asked him.
Yeah.
Nobody makes Mickey Most do anything. Asked him to flip it to the A-side. And we went back into, we recorded the first B-side at Morgan's studio. We recorded the second A-side at the Magical Abbey Road studio.
Wow.
And Mickey repressed it, put it out, and we got a TV show with it called 45 in 1975.
Right.
I think it was June of 1975.
Is that the video that's online? Because I watched the video.
No,
The
that
video.
was later.
All right.
There was video, we did the TV show 45, and Merrill Young was the producer of that show. She had been producing the Bay City Rollers TV show Shang-a-Lang. And she said, "I want you guys to have your own TV series." We're thinking, sure. Based on I Love Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
She was so impressed
Before
with
the Monkees?
Yeah. No, this is after
After
the
the
Monkees.
Monkees.
After this is 1975.
Show, yeah.
1975, we played the song on her produced show.
Wow.
She produced 45. But the next year, we got our own TV series in March, based on I Love Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
And
Legend.
so that the first series
Yeah.
went, and then we had another series because it was so popular.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our relationship with the record company deteriorated so that we didn't have any records out.
With the Arrows.
With the Arrows TV series, we're the only band in history to have our own TV series and no records out.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was very frustrating and it broke up the band. But we took on management. Mickey Most said, "Don't take on management," and we did because he offered us a lot of money, compared to what we were making.
Right.
And Mickey said, "If you go with him, I'm not going to put any more records out."
Like it's another low point. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
we called
another time.
We called his bluff.
It's
and
like the rug is getting pulled
That's
out.
right, totally,
From you.
totally. So it was all right because we were getting a little long in the tooth to be doing the teenage thing anyway. I was
You're good at what you do.
I
You're
was
not
past
gonna
20.
worry
I was
too
past
much,
25,
Yeah.
and I was still making the girls scream. That was a good thing. But the Arrows broke up after that. We put out 6 singles in all, and 3 are hits. So that's not bad going. A lot of bootlegs have come out with other Arrows stuff on since because we recorded a whole lot of material with Mickey producing that he didn't put out. Like you said, we have quality control at RAC, and but a lot of the outtakes have come out on like A's, B's, and Rarities, on Tawny Tracks, a bunch of Arrows albums. So after the Arrows broke up, I started a group called Runner on Island Records.
Now this is where are you
This is in
now?
England.
You're still in England?
Still in England. I got married, had 2 kids.
Wow, all right.
A lot of a high nut to crack in terms of upkeep because I had to support the wife and kids.
Right.
And fortunately, what I've discovered was the rock scene and the pop scene are very different in England in terms of pay. Because immediately with Island Records, I was on £250 a week to stay at home. With the Arrows, I was on £35 a week.
How much is the pounds not compared to dollars? Like 35, you said. 50.
Back then, it was like $3 to a pound. I think back then.
So like what you said.
I was making like $100 a week
all right.
with the Arrows.
So they know people out there.
Yeah. So that's probably the exchange rate back then. It was $100 a week. It was enough to pay my rent and eat fish and chips.
You still had money.
But like I said, I was doing sessions for pop bands like Flintlock, ghosting the bass parts on their records.
Wow.
I was playing on a lot of jingles, and then I got into this. I got into this old music band, which was not about the image.
Right.
It was with Dave Dowell, the original drummer from Whitesnake, Steve Gould from Rare Bird, who went on to Alvin Lee after Runner.
Wow.
And Mickey Fiat, who was with Van Morrison's Wavelength band.
Right.
So they all left and we started Runner. And we made the American charts. But there was no picture of the band on the album cover. It was like a greyhound running.
We made the charts for what? What's a single?
Yeah, it was the album. The album chart. In fact, Nick Mason of Pink Floyd said it was the Runner album and James Guthrie's production why they hired James Guthrie to produce The Wall.
Yeah.
Because they loved the sounds on the Runner album.
Right.
If you listen to the bass sound on our song Dynamite on the Runner album, you'll hear exactly what Pink Floyd were hoping for when they did The Wall. And they got it.
Yeah.
They got James's amazing production.
Love that album.
And James got a Grammy for that album. Not for the Runner album, but anyway, the weird thing about Runner was Mick and Steve didn't want to tour. And we were in the American charts. So I had Harvey Goldsmith, the biggest promoter in England, calling me up saying, why won't you guys tour? And I had Bill Graham from America saying, I want you guys to open up for the Allman Brothers, but you won't do it.
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
Get your band together. It's like, you know what? The contract's under Steve Gould's name.
Right.
And the three other guys in the band are sort of like on a salary, contracted players.
Right.
I can't force Steve to tour.
Right.
So Island dropped us for not touring, basically.
Wow.
Which was another blow. Like, moronic, won't tour. Then the band breaks up. I go back to New York. I hook up with Rick Derringer. I'm on tour 9 months out of the year.
You're already established.
I mean, Steve Gould goes off with Alvin Lee with Mick Fiat, and they're on that Night Flyer tour, And the drummer Dave Dowell, he goes off with Maggie Bell. So what was the point of not touring with Runner when we're in the charts?
Wow.
And when the group breaks up, everybody goes out on tour as a sideman. When we could have been stars in our own right. The band could have rivaled. The band was supposed to be Island's new Traffic. It's really the band were stubborn, and as it was explained to me by Mick Fiat, Mick said to me, I've just been doing stadiums with Van Morrison. I don't want to go back to the clubs. But we got to go back to the clubs.
Big mistake.
You got to tour to make. Otherwise, they won't make a second album. So we did 3 songs with Alex Sadkin producing for the second album, who went on to do Duran Duran's hits.
Right.
But and I recognize he was
a lot of history here. Folks.
Yeah.
So they're hearing a lot of good things.
So Duran did very well with Alex, but another one who's departed, Alex Sadkin.
Wow.
He's an angel.
Wow.
But amazing producer. And so then Runner broke up, so I went back to the States.
Derringer.
And went and toured with Rick and on the blind
Derringer.
face-to-face tour.
Yeah.
And it was Donnie Kisselback on bass, Jimmy Wilcox on the drums. They went on to do Scandal and Fiona, and then there was Benji King on the keyboards, amazing player, and of course Rick on the guitar. And then I left Derringer in '83, did a solo album for Polydor. I was signed to Eddie Germano, Hit Factory, and his Porcelain.
That was in New York, the Hit Factory.
New York, yeah.
Right?
It was a studio.
Studio. Michael Jackson.
Yeah, John Lennon did all his records there.
Yeah.
And Foreigner were recording there when I was recording there.
I was down at Gibson. They were giving me the whole tour. Michael Jackson used to come. They're telling me, the people from Gibson Guitars, Michael Jackson used to walk right here.
Michael Jackson was this far away from me. Why are you in Japan? Yeah. What are you doing in Japan? Yeah. And I got lipstick on, I got blush on, mascara, and I'm all glammed up.
You're back to the ranch.
I got silver lame jacket, purple trousers, stacked heels, and he's going, "What the hell is this?"
You could have been, like one of the pets down in Neverland.
I think I made a bad impact on him that day. I think I steered him wrong.
You scared Michael Jackson. Now that's a first. You scared him.
No. I think he liked the glam rock thing. In fact, if you listen to my song "Scratchin'," my guitar player Musya Kamayetz from Vodka Collins says that the riff is very similar in Thriller to my "Scratchin'" riff. Well, who knows? I mean, it'd be great if I did have you a smidgen of influence on him. Yeah. I know he was. He was shocked that day, and all his brothers were good friends. They were really nice guys. So anyway, Derringer, solo album in the mid-'80s. Then I played with Meatloaf.
Wow.
Because the album, Eddie Germano didn't renew his contract with Polydor. So Polydor said, "You're not going to make a follow-up album." So I go, "What do I do?" Then I heard Meatloaf was looking for a guitar player, so I went with Meatloaf. And 86.
That was after Bat Out of Hell?
Yeah, long after. He had just put out, but I'm on a live version of Bat Out of Hell.
Oh, okay.
I'm on a live version of 2 Out of 3 Ain't Bad,
Wow.
and took the words right out of my mouth.
Right.
All those songs I'm on live versions of.
Now Bob was with him. Bob Kulick was with
Bobby
Meatloaf,
was also the guitarist.
Wow.
Steve Buslow on the bass. Amy and Elaine Goff.
So you toured and you recorded
We
with
toured.
Meatloaf.
We toured like 9-10 months out of the year.
Wow.
Meatloaf had to tour to make money because he didn't make any money off of Bat Out of Hell. That's a famous story. And his
He must have sold. Everybody had Bat Out of Hell.
Come on, yeah.
I had it.
Yeah, everybody had it.
Everybody listened to it.
I was on the board of governors of NYRocks, so I got one free.
I gotta get some free stuff.
But yeah, so anyway, it was pretty amazing to play with Meatloaf and the people that I'd meet. I mean, Hammersmith Odeon, we played 5 nights sold out, and the last night we played there, the whole cast of Rocky Horror who were living in London got up on stage with us. So I'm on stage with Richard O'Brien and Little Nell.
Maybe somebody with a video camera back then.
There are people with pictures. I've only seen one picture. If anyone out there has any more pictures, please post them to my website, alanmerrill.com. If you don't have the spelling, just look up "I Love Rock and Roll" on Wikipedia. I'm at the top of the page. Yeah, I'm at the top of the page. You just click on my name, and it goes to my Wikipedia page.
I'm gonna get on Wikipedia. I like that.
Yeah,
much informed.
I didn't make the Wikipedia page, and people fight about what's on there, and it's funny. I'm gonna rip this page apart and put it back together again. I don't know. So anyway, I finished with Meatloaf, and then I'm acting in this Encyclopedia Brown show, which is produced by Savage Steve Holland, who did Better Off Dead and One Crazy Summer. Wow. Launched John Cusack. Wow. And Steve said to me his dream scene was to have me and John Cusack and Bobcat Goldthwait in a scene together. He said it would be magic. Wow. I don't know what he was seeing in his head.
You had that voice, that thing of Bobcat. Oh my God. He's straining himself. I hope your head don't blow up.
I know, he's a funny guy. And Cusack is very dry, so it could be interesting. But anyway, I did the Encyclopedia Brown show, and they gave me very good reviews on in People magazine. And I'm not an actor, I'm a musician, but they said I was the best actor in the production, which was cool. And I wrote the theme song, Who Done It, which I put out as my first indie single in 1990.
Cool.
It was on MEC Records, and I started my MEC Records from there. My wife was saying, "You'll never make any money with this. It's going to be too hard." I pressed up my own vinyl, put ads in the teen magazines, Encyclopedia Brown, and
you learned
it's
a lot. You
sold.
had a lot of education.
It's
you
sold.
Traveled the world.
Yeah, I knew how to, So, fast forwarding to the '90s, then I did some blues albums with a producer I don't want to mention, but it was an album called Blue Guru and Yes, I Ram. And I did I wrote a song that was covered by Freddie Scott, who did Hey Girl, the original Hey Girl. Yeah. And I sang songs that were covered by Wilson Pickett by Robert Cray, by Buddy Guy and Johnny Lang. I mean, the list goes on of the R&B performers who covered stuff that I sang on those albums. So I have had an impact on the R&B market. So I didn't just write I Love Rock and Roll either.
Yeah.
I wrote When the Night Comes for Lou Rawls.
Right.
Actually, I wrote it for Runner, but Runner didn't make a second album. So Lou Rawls had the demo, and he recorded it as the title track of his 1983 album.
Wow.
So
are you in are you part of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or
No.
the Songwriters Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
No.
Well, I think you should be.
I probably, when you've written...
There's another guy that I don't understand the whole concept.
Let me tell you.
And they think they know music, and it's like these are people that should know music.
Right.
And we know music because we're the fans. I guess we know more than they do, but we figured they would know more about the history of music and would appreciate.
A lot of times
give that respect to
it's the
people out there.
corporations, greasing one palm greases the other, and a little money
But
changes
guys like the
hands.
Zombies and
Yeah.
Rick Derringer should be in the rock and roll. Chubby
Absolutely.
Checker.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, I
mean,
agree.
Wake up, guys. Wake up.
I think if Joan Jett wants to get into the Hall of Fame, I think
Joan Jett.
she has to be Joan Jett, not Joan Jett and the Blackhearts.
Right.
I think because her career is so much bigger
Right.
beyond the Blackhearts.
Right.
She did, the Runaways. She was,
Yeah.
she
Oh,
kept the
that's
Runaways
amazing.
together.
Yeah.
And she,
Nita Ford, right, was in the Runaways
yeah,
too?
she
right?
also did, she did movies like Light of Day with
Right.
Michael J. Fox. So her career's huge
Right.
beyond the Blackhearts. So I think it's a mistake for her to just call herself Joan Jett and the Blackhearts for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction.
She was
That's
there because
my
I was there.
advice.
Because
That's my advice.
I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction.
Kenny Laguna, do
and
you
she
hear
played
me?
at the end. She
Yeah.
played at the
Yeah.
end. I'm like, you're there, and they won't.
That was
it's
with
like
Nir-
a slap in the face.
That was with Nirvana.
Like you could play,
Yeah.
but hello,
Yeah.
hello.
So in the 90s, I did these R&B albums. At the same time, I was going back to Japan to do the Vodka Collins reunions.
Wow.
And we
Oh,
did,
you had a reunion.
We did 4 albums. The first reunion was in 1990,
Yeah.
after I did the Encyclopedia Brown show.
Wow.
And we brought over the Coconuts,
Wow.
the Kid Creole and the Coconuts as backing singers. Robin LeMessurier from Rod Stewart's
I could say,
band.
yeah, I know all this, but I really, this is so much education
And I
involved.
brought over my buddy from the
couldn't-
Derringer Band,
That's a
Donnie
lot.
Kisselbach.
That's a lot.
And then we had Japanese
Right.
guys. I dubbed my horn section
Wow.
the upskirt horns.
Yeah. Unless
As-
you were there and part of the Japanese, the whole scene, and being in England, I mean, to find out all about all this information, you definitely have to have the artist here and be
Yeah.
hearing from him.
And this is why I'm writing a
the whole
book.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
This guy deserves you.
I'm writing a
definitely-
book because my career is so fragmented and so strange
needs to be
that it
told
needs a
in a
book
book.
to tie it all into a neat ball.
Well, they say a book is like a big, how they make the movie.
Yeah.
But the movie's always like shorter, but
Yeah.
the book tells the big story.
My book
the
would
whole
make an
picture,
amazing
right? The whole
movie. You're
picture.
starting off in jazz
Even though it's
as a
not
kid,
fiction. Right.
and then moving on to
Yeah, yeah.
rock and,
Where are you? All right, so now that you're, oh my God, now you're already back to New York City.
Right. Back in New York from England, and
You're already doing the things with Derringer.
Derringer,
and stuff
solo
like-
album in the mid-'80s.
And then you had the
Meatloaf,
reunion
and
thing.
then the Encyclopedia Brown TV
Right.
show as
Oh,
an actor
wow.
and writing the theme song.
Yeah.
Then I went to back to Japan to do the reunion of Vodka Collins, 1990,
Yeah.
with an all-star cast,
Mhm.
and a lot of that's on the internet on YouTube. It's got the time codes over it because it was never
Man,
finished.
you're lucky you started out when you were young. 'Cause
Yeah.
you had a big career.
Then
big career.
then in 1994, after doing these R&B albums, I went back to Japan, and I was staying 6 months out of the year in Japan.
Right.
96, 97, 98, 99. I was practically living in Japan again, working with Vodka Collins, and
And you're already married with the kids.
yeah, my kids were all grown up by then, Now my son is 34, oldest daughter 36.
Your grandfather yet? Grandparent?
No, I'm not a grandfather yet.
Oh,
No, my
they're waiting.
daughter just got married,
They're
so
late bloomers.
give them a little time.
Uh,
She's only been married about 6 months.
no
a year.
grandpa.
Not yet. But my youngest daughter is past the first year of law school, and she's working this summer at a law firm making money,
New York
as a
City,
paralegal.
in America, right?
In fact, she's going to Palo Alto on a business trip tomorrow, which to me is amazing. My little
be very
girl
proud.
is going to be a lawyer on a business trip. It's fun. From this rock and roller from
Dad,
the Bronx.
rock and roll dad.
From College
lawyer
Avenue in the Bronx.
Daughter. Lawyer daughter.
So yeah, so I've what I've been doing since 2000 is putting out my own albums,
Right.
you know, re-recording my old songs and writing new ones. And I put out an album a year on my own label, MEC Records. I've got an album called Numbers, Snakes and Ladders. I got The Face of 69.
Right.
And, you know, it goes on.
It's really
like
hard
that.
being in a band, but besides being in a band, being a solo act, you really have to get focused
Yeah.
and to know
Yeah.
your craft to do that and make it happen.
You gotta
and
look-
have a finished product.
You got to
right?
look back to look forward.
Right.
And so this is the 40th
Cool.
anniversary.
There you go, right there.
Yeah.
3D
You
TV.
see, this was taken by Amanda
There is
Watts.
3D TV today.
Amanda Watts took this picture.
Right.
And Andrea Watts, I'm sorry. I
Right.
always call her Amanda. It's the Rolodex in my mind, the A-letter. And this is taken by my girlfriend Michi
They're gonna have to open this up because it's
from
gonna get all
1960
shiny.
1968.
You want it all
Well,
shiny.
I brought this for you.
I gotta
I brought
eat it
this for you
open,
to have.
bite it open.
This has the arrows,
I don't wanna mess
the
my
arrows
teeth
hits
up.
on it, re-recorded. I Love Rock and Roll, Touch Too Much, My Last Night With You,
Yeah.
and the songs from the Arrow Vision Song Contest
Wow.
on the TV show, which were never released. And so I recorded them to
Amazing. Well,
release
thank
them.
you for bringing this. Now, is this new?
That's for you.
This
That's
came
new.
out.
It's out
This is
next week, in fact. These are the promo copies, and it's just
Very
started.
cool, man.
So-
You know, I just recently seen you at the cutting room.
That's right.
I met you years ago.
The British, I know. That was with my crazy
Well,
friend.
me and
My
Alan met
My crazy friend
at the
Glenn.
VIP club
Yeah.
in Manhattan back in the day, my little wild days.
It was
And
in the
I'm there,
90s,
and
yeah?
I was like,
In the
I'm
90s.
gonna go to this thing. I got
Yeah.
money in my pocket, and the VIP got all the hottest ladies
Right,
over there.
yeah, yeah.
And I went in there, and I was like a big shot, you know. And I meet this guy, right? He's like hanging out with us. We're at the clubs in New York. He's like, yeah, we'll go
And my
over
friend
to the
and my friend
VIP
from
club.
Staten Island, Glenn Garofano, or Glenn Reese as he called himself, when he was rock and roll manager.
Yeah.
Glenn said, "Tell everybody you're Ace Frehley."
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, I'm not Ace Frehley. You know, I've done
Maybe
my own.
I thought
have
you were
my
Ace
own.
Frehley.
I have my own hit records.
Who knows,
you know,
back in the day,
I'm a
right?
pop star in my own right.
Yeah.
I don't have to say I'm somebody else." But he kept telling the strippers, you know,
Yeah.
he's Ace Frehley. And I said, "No, I'm not." They come up and, "No, I'm not," because they were hitting on me for tips. They heard Ace was a big.
That's like
freewheeler.
20. Oh my God. What's
So Glenn
going on here?
Glenn was playing mischief.
Mm.
You know, Glenn, his family owned a lot of the strip clubs in Las Vegas, or co-owned.
Right.
So he invited me out to Vegas once, and we're sitting there, and this is the 90s, my wild time, and he actually takes a match and sets one of the strippers' skirts on fire.
Wow.
And says, "It was him. Why you got to do that, Alan?" And I'm imitating his
yeah.
voice. Right? "Alan, why you do it? Why you set up?" that?" And she said, "I'm going to kill you." And she said, "Security, have him thrown out." I said, "Glenn, you're co-owner of this club."
You take care.
And he did. He took care. He said, "No, I'm only kidding. It was me. I'm a screw. How much did it cost? Here's a couple hundred." He gave the girl, "Buy yourself another skirt."
You're lucky
But
you got away with that.
Another time,
couldn't happen
I'm on the
over
cell
there.
phone in Vegas to my wife from a diner.
Wow.
There's a table of cops.
Yeah.
And I have my phone like this. It's on speakerphone, but I have it held up.
Yeah.
He said, "Alan, put the gun down."
Oh my God.
And I said, "Glenn, that's not funny."
Yeah.
That's the kind of jokester he
Yeah.
is. He's a dangerous guy to hang around with. Needless to say, we don't hang out anymore because I like life.
You're like, yeah, really.
I
you
like
gotta watch
living.
out. Especially in these days. You know,
I hear he got
everything's
married.
so-
He settled down a bit. Yeah.
All right, calm down,
Yeah.
right? That's your Staten Island buddy.
But he's a tear away from Staten Island. Yeah. He lives in Florida, Vegas, California. He's all over the place.
Wow, so
He's like the Fredo of his family.
he's
They
still
move him
friends.
around.
Still friend, but he calmed down. So.
Yeah.
All right, wow. And then
Yeah.
you told me, you're like, yeah, I wrote that song, I Love Rock and Roll.
I was the
like,
original
wow.
artist.
And I was kind of like, wow, this is cool. This guy wrote that song. I met you again at Cutting Room.
Right.
Performed with John Ford.
Yeah, you
and
took
Ian
some great
Lloyd.
pictures and some videos.
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
It was a fun night, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We were the
I
only
love
band that
it.
didn't have a sound check. They didn't tell me there was going to be a sound check. So I get up and I plug my guitar in.
Yeah.
And John Ford has it set up for surf guitar.
Right.
So I go, I can't have this. And I like the crunch sound.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Ricky Byrd from Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, that's
right.
my sound too. I love the crunchy Paul Kossoff free sound.
Right.
And so I go, what do I do? So I call the sound guy, will you please get me a crunch sound? Remember his settings,
Yeah.
so you can put them back when John Ford comes
Very
in.
good sound.
So it was,
Yeah.
he got me a
He knows
decent
what he's
sound.
doing, that guy.
So it was quick,
Yeah.
boom. And I had some trouble with my boxes first, but they
Yeah.
sorted that out too.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
You know what they're doing.
Yeah. So you
It's
know,
a
it was.
beautiful club. We
Yeah.
changed a couple spots.
We had our
Yeah,
15
yeah,
minutes
yeah.
that night. I got to do 4 hits. I did
Yeah.
my Japanese hit,
Yeah.
Automatic Pilot in English.
Yeah.
And then I did Touch Too Much my last night
Right.
with you, I Love Rock and Roll and Off.
That was a great performance.
Yeah, thanks.
I enjoyed it immensely. I was
All
like,
chart
man,
hits.
I was like, and then I told you about the story how I met you there. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
I was
I
like,
remember
cool.
that
You're
night.
such a cool
It's
guy. you know?
blurry because
guy.
I had a lot of
Yeah.
martinis that during those days.
But you seem so grounded, like too good for everybody, like kind of attitude.
I was brought up in
But
the
you're
music
like, hey,
business.
You're cool,
I was
you
brought
know,
up with Miles
you know?
Davis, Stan Getz,
Yeah.
all those guys around the
Yeah.
house. So, you know, I knew these people were just people.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
anyone who thinks they're more than that just because they have a hit record or two
Yeah, yeah.
is, you know, delusional.
Yeah, yeah.
It's better to just
Because you meet
be
the same
yourself.
people. You know?
Yeah,
And then you
exactly,
do-
exactly.
I
I still have my
He goes, that
friends.
ain't fair because I'm the sewer. He goes, right, I was at Norton, right?
Right.
The honeymooners. All right, so now you performed at the cutting room. What's
Cutting
next
room.
for you?
The next, I have 2
What's
gigs
next for you?
Thursday,
All right.
June the
I
26th.
don't know if it's going to air for that.
Right.
That's like soon,
Choga.
but-
Choga. I'm playing a solo acoustic at Choga
Yeah.
with my bass player Amy Madden, who's playing her own solo acoustic set. She has a great album out
I
called
seen the
Discarded
lady-
Angels.
the lady
yeah,
bass player.
yeah.
Yeah.
She does solo acoustic stuff too, and she's like my Keith Richards. She's amazing. And then we go on to the Rock Shop in Brooklyn,
Right.
and we do an electric show at 11 p.m. So we do 2 shows in one night, which is like the old days. Hit one club, then finish, hit the other club, another borough,
Yeah.
and then come home tired.
Wow. Yeah.
No groupies anymore. Those
Oh,
days are over.
Yeah, rock and roll, and
I had-
you know the video too. You're standing all the time. You know, I got
Yeah.
a bad back, and my
Yeah.
back hurts, and
Yeah.
sitting too long, and standing too long.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my god, a lot of pain. You know. You
I haven't
go
got
through
that
it,
yet,
so
so.
everything.
But I get it the next day after
Yeah.
jumping around on stage with the heavy Les Paul.
You're holding the Les Paul.
Les Paul's heavy.
Yeah, heavy.
Heavier every year.
Hey, you know, the Les Pauls, you know, they got that heavy sound too. You know,
The sands of
everybody loves their
time.
Les
That's
Paul,
true, yeah.
Right?
I have
That's
3
one
Les
thing.
Pauls. I actually have a Les Paul Telecaster.
Yeah.
Only 28 made.
I have did a lot of things down at Gibson Guitars. You
Yeah.
know, worked with them a lot
Yeah.
of you know, at different times down at the showroom and various events
This was
that
a
go
fe-
down at Hard Rock and
This
stuff.
is a
you know?
Fender
Yeah,
Les Paul.
yeah,
Sanctioned by Les Paul
yeah.
with humbuckers.
But don't say Fender and Les Paul and Gibson.
I know.
You can't because
I know.
they're like the
No,
competition.
no.
And it's like
That's why it's a
it's
limited
nonsense,
edition.
though. They're
That's
both
why they only
great.
made 28 of these.
They're both great.
But I saw it
Guitars.
at Sam Ash and I was like, gotta have that.
Yeah.
I don't care what it costs.
Yeah.
And the guy working there said, damn it, I was saving up for that one.
Yeah.
It's too bad. Yeah.
Okay, but they have the saying too with the Stratocaster, you know.
Yeah.
The
I have
Stratocaster.
4 Stratocasters, yeah.
It was the Jimi Hendrix. With
Yeah,
the
yeah, get that
Stratocaster.
sound, yeah.
And Jimmy Page was with the Les Paul, Ace Frehley, Angus Young played
Yeah,
the
yeah.
SG.
He's got a
Remember
great
the SG?
vibrato.
SG.
Yeah.
What a player, what
He's
a
got a
great
Casa
player.
vibrato.
Great play. What's some of your influences?
I love the early Rolling Stones, Free's first 4 albums, 5 albums. I like the band,
Yeah.
music for Big Pink.
Right.
You know, I love R&B. I love Al Green. I love Otis Redding. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Frankie Miller. Speaking of Otis Redding, you know, Frankie was great. I love Thin Lizzy.
Yeah.
You know, my buddy Brian Robertson. I remember when he joined the band. He made a big difference to that band. He brought them into the charts with Boys Are Back in Town.
Okay, now let's finish this up. It was a great interview. I want to thank
Thank
you
you.
very much for coming down.
I'm glad I made it.
Oh man,
Great.
it's so cool. But speaking with you, you know, when is this book? What are you working on the book?
I've been
When's
working
that
on the
gonna be
books.
ready?
I've been working on the book since 1999, but things keep
That is a
changing.
lot of work.
People keep dying,
Right.
and I changed the story.
Right.
People I was hard on
Yeah.
die, and I have to soften it because they
Right.
have children,
Yeah,
and I don't want to
sure.
go too hard on them because
Right.
that's their dad's legacy.
Right.
So I've been, you know, and it's time for me to wrap it up now. I mean, I Love Rock and Roll just became a Toyota commercial this
Right.
week in Japan.
Right.
So we've got Honda in the States
Right.
with I Love Rock and Roll.
You take
Toyota.
advantage of that right now.
We
You're
got
still
Mariachi
around with us.
Doritos.
Oh, great. That was
We
like-
got
yeah,
we
it
got
was in your
Mariachi
mind.
Doritos, and we got
Fantastic.
we got Peugeot in Germany, Austria, and
Right.
Switzerland. I mean, it's just like and Sony Walkman in
Wow.
Japan. the new Walkman is I Love Rock and Roll. So the song is now got
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
5 commercials going right now.
I mean, there's a Writers Hall of Fame too, right? You
And I have the song. I have the song "Restless Soul,"
Right.
which is on a travel show called "Windows of the World" every night in Japan. It's not "I Love Rock and Roll." There's a song called "Restless Soul."
It's ridiculous.
And it's on 5 nights a week.
I want to thank you. You contribute so much to music and rock and roll and the history of rock and roll.
Thank you for having me on the show.
And this CD, you could pick up.
It's going to be on CD Baby, and it's going to be downloaded on iTunes and all the other outlets within 2 weeks.
Right. Now, if people want to find out more about you, how do they find out? They can log on. You're on Facebook. You're on social media.
AlanMerrill.com.
Actually, yeah.
It's AlanMerrill.com.
So 2 R's and 2 L's.
Yeah, it's my website.
I spelt it right.
Yeah,
actually,
like Merrill Lynch.
Yeah, But thank you again.
Thanks,
and,
Phil.
You keep on
Pleasure being
rocking.
on.
Maybe we'll play one of the videos. So why don't we go and check out the video from you at the cutting room,
Excellent.
rocking out on
Please.
New York Rocks. Who rocks better than us?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Who
Rock the
rocks?
best. You know it. All right. Peace out, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Cheers, bye. This was a hit top 10 for me in 1974. This week, 40 years ago. All right, let's go. Touch too much.
Yeah.
Well, you got me shaking from my head to the bottom of my toes. Shaking all over like nobody knows. With your head on my shoulder, your hand on my knee. Listen up, baby, now mama can't see. All I can do is hold on tight. Make it together all through the night. Mama don't mind when mama don't see it. It's getting so hot that you're burning me. I wanna touch too much of your tender love. Touch too much of your good loving. Just a touch too much of your tender love. Now I'm running a fever of not being above. Well, it ain't easy to figure out the way I feel. Somehow, honey, it don't seem real. You lit the fire of my desire. Now the flames of love are burning high. Every little word you say to me makes my backbone shiver. I get weaker to me. Oh, my back, you turn me on. How can anyone say it won't last long? I wanna touch too much of your tender love. Touch too much of your good love. Just touch too much of your tender love. Now I'm running a fever of 90 above. Get down. Oh, come on now, honey. Let's slow down just a little. I want to feel your touch. 'Cause honey, you know you make me shake. And I just want you to loosen up a little bit for me. Honey, you know what I want. I wanna touch too much of your tender love. Touch too much of your good loving. Just touch too much of your tender love. Now I'm running the fever of 90 above. I wanna touch too much of your tender love. Touch too much of your good loving. Just touch too much of your tender love. Now I'm running the fever of 90 above. Thank you very much. Top 10 in 1974, produced by Mickey Most, the late great Mickey Most. This is the last song that we're going to do tonight, and it's one I wrote in 1975. Been covered by a lot of wonderful ladies: Joan Jett, Britney Spears, Miley Cyrus, Melanie C, and some fellas who are great: Alvin Stardust, Chawadi Wadi, Dave Bartram sang it. And I think my voice only allows one more song, so here we do. I Love Rock and Roll. birthday